Quiet Betrayal. Harold Klein was 62 years old, and if one were charitable, one could say he wore the number well. His body, though loyal in its functions, betrayed him in subtle humiliations. The nightly pilgrimages to the bathroom, the ache in the knees when the weather turned damp, the bitter metallic taste of pills that lined his breakfast tray. A retired teacher of history, he had spent decades tracing the slow arcs of empires, their glory and their eventual decline, telling impressionable students that civilizations always rotted from within before they were conquered from without. Now, as he walked past the mirror each morning, he wondered if he had been teaching his own prophecy all along. The house where he and Ellen had raised their 2 sons felt cavernous. Laughter once rolled through its rooms like music, but now silence lingered in the corners. Ellen filled the emptiness with small, deliberate acts. Flowers on the table, music from the radio, perfume dabbed onto her wrist before errands that seemed to multiply each week. She moved through the house as though it were a stage and Harold a stubborn audience member who refused to applaud. It was the message on her phone that shattered the fragile illusion of permanence. Last night was perfect. Can't stop thinking about you. Harold didn't scroll further. The single sentence was a hammer. It did not matter who the man was. It mattered that Ellen, his Ellen, auburn-haired in memory and still lively in her 60s, had written it or received it with eagerness. He stood in the bathroom mirror the next morning, staring at the sag of his jawline, the dull gray of his eyes, and whispered, "What happened to you, Harold? Where did you go?" The children were grown, yet their presence lingered like unfinished arguments. Martin, the eldest, a lawyer with the moral outrage of a televangelist, accused Harold of hoarding. He came to the house one evening demanding to see the map. The map was family legend. A yellowed piece of paper folded into an old Bible, marked with cryptic lines and notes from Harold's grandfather, who had insisted there was treasure, silver coins hidden somewhere on the family's ancestral land. No one had ever found it. To Harold, it was both joke and weapon. He brought it out whenever he wanted to remind his sons who still held power. "You don't even believe in this damn treasure," Martin snapped that night, slamming his palm on the table. "Belief is for priests and fools," Harold replied calmly, holding the folded paper just out of reach. "This is about stewardship, and I decide when it changes hands." Daniel, the younger, had less fire but more resentment. "It's not the map, Dad. It's you. You never gave us anything without a string attached. Not money, not love. Everything was a deal, a bargain. Even now." The words struck Harold more deeply than he admitted. He had indeed turned life into a ledger. What he gave, what he expected in return. Even his marriage sometimes felt like an account balanced precariously in his favor until now. Ellen was different these days. She wore brighter lipstick. She hummed while she cooked, smiled at text messages, and left for lunches that lasted until evening. She looked alive, and Harold hated her for it. Hated her because her vitality revealed his own decline. At night, he lay beside her, imagining her body with another man. Oddly, it was not jealousy of the rival that tormented him most, but the thought of her rediscovering pleasure, rediscovering herself. He pictured her laugh, her flushed cheeks, and it stabbed deeper than any imagined embrace. He confronted her once, awkwardly, over roast chicken. "Ellen," he said, his fork trembling in his hand, "we need to talk about us." She looked at him with amusement, as though he were a schoolboy reciting lines. "Us? After 40 years, Harold, what more is there to say?" She didn't deny anything. She didn't confess either. She simply smiled, that subtle smile that made him feel both foolish and, against his will, still in love. Frank Meyer's name returned to Harold's life like a curse. Years ago, they had been colleagues in a small publishing venture, and the partnership had ended in rancor. Frank was loud, ruddy-faced, a man who bragged of vacations and wine cellars. He had once accused Harold publicly of being a miser, a man who mistakes saving for living. Now Frank appeared again. At a luncheon Harold had been too weak to avoid, Frank sat across from Ellen, his hand brushing hers as they laughed. Harold felt the old heat of rivalry flare. Frank was not merely a ghost from his past but, perhaps, the shadow now looming over Ellen's future. Still chasing coins in maps, Harold? Frank asked, smirking. Still chasing other men's wives, Frank? Harold retorted. The table went silent. Ellen excused herself with a smile that chilled Harold more than her absence. Harold had always been a liar, though not an accomplished one. He lied about investments, about his health, about how many women he had kissed before Ellen. Lies kept him inflated, like air pumped into a sagging balloon. He lied to his sons about the value of the treasure, to Frank about his bank account, to Ellen about everything that hurt too much to say. His ailments gave him unexpected moments of comedy. "At least my prostate keeps me honest," he muttered one night while fumbling for pills. "Loyal, unlike my family." He laughed at his own joke, a laugh that was half cough, half sob. When insomnia gripped him, Harold thought like the historian he once was. Empires fell not from outside attack, but from within greed, betrayal, division. His family was Rome on the eve of the barbarians. Ellen was his Byzantium, glorious, desired, and destined to fall to another man's hands. But philosophy offered no comfort, only questions. What next? Could a man survive betrayal when he has already betrayed himself? Could love exist beyond desire, beyond time? One evening, as rain tapped the windows, Harold unfolded the map again. Its lines led nowhere. His promises were dust. Treasure had never been silver or coins. Treasure had been Ellen in her auburn youth, choosing him, smiling at him. He had squandered it, hoarded her as he hoarded everything else, and now she was gone in spirit if not in body. At dinner he tried once more. "Ellen," he said softly, almost pleading, "do you remember when we were young? When you smoked those menthols and laughed at my jokes? When we thought life was permanent?" She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes unreadable. Then she rose, kissed his forehead lightly, and whispered, "Harold, you always wanted permanence. I only wanted life." The words broke him more than any confession could. That night, Harold sat in the kitchen, the map before him, the house quiet but for the hum of the refrigerator. His sons despised him, his wife had betrayed him, and his body was failing. Yet he laughed again, softly, bitterly. History had been right all along. Every empire falls, and every man is his own ruin. Perhaps tomorrow he would confront Ellen. Perhaps he would burn the map in front of Martin and Daniel. Perhaps he would do nothing at all. For now, he simply whispered to the empty room, "Life isn't cruel. It isn't kind. It just is." And with that, Harold Klein, at 62, sat in the ruins of his small empire, haunted not by Ellen's betrayal, but by the quiet certainty that he had betrayed himself first.